Suffering must be lived to the end so that we can give up the illusion that we need to suffer. This video is not about getting revenge, nor about becoming cold. It's about wake up from the emotional hypnosis that taught you to confuse kindness with submission. Many people are living in an invisible cycle. It is always the one who listens, who forgives, who understands, and also who is most disappointed. Have you ever noticed how do certain people always pursue the same targets? They don't go after the difficult ones, the firm ones, the ones who know how to say no. They choose the malleable ones, the ones who are afraid of displeasing. Today you will understand why certain emotional wounds are not an accident, they are standard. And most importantly, how to get out of this target role, once and for all. The invisible architecture of targeting. There are pains that do not scream. They don't show bruises, they don't leave visible scars, but they silently shape the way you breathe in front of someone. How you measure your words, how you control your tone of voice, how you choose when to disagree or when to remain silent. You may not even realize it yet, but you've been trained for years to be a target. Yes, trained. And this does not happen because of weakness. It happens for emotional survival. It all starts with small signs, almost imperceptible. The way you hesitate to set boundaries. The fear of being misunderstood. The restlessness you feel when you say, "This isn't good for me." Or that diffuse guilt that haunts you for days when you decide to distance yourself from someone who hurts you. Want to keep diving into reflections like this? Then subscribe to the channel so we can bring you deeper and deeper content. And if something touched you or sparked an idea, share it in the comments. These are the traces of a self-image constructed to avoid conflict at all costs. And what seems like a virtue, empathy, kindness, tolerance, is actually a poorly placed shield, created to protect you, but which ironically only leaves you more exposed. It's like your mind is saying all the time, "If I'm nice enough, no one will hurt me." But the world does not respond to sweetness, it responds to the energy you transmit. And here's the most important point. You didn't choose this consciously. This way of existing was woven with the thread of necessity. It was an emotional system formed back in childhood, when you understood, or rather were taught, that love was a reward and not a right. That attention came after the effort. That silence kept the peace. That being good was being convenient. People who grew up in unpredictable environments, with authoritarian, emotionally absent, or even unstable parental figures, learned early on to adapt. And adapting in this context was not just a skill, it was psychic survival. So you learned to read faces before words came, reading the mood before expressing an opinion, doing everything right, to avoid being rejected, criticized, or ridiculed. Over time, this programming became standard, and what started as protection became a prison. This belief infiltrates every gesture. You listen more than you speak, give more than you receive, and deep down you still wonder why you continue to be the last to be considered. Why do certain people seem to feel so comfortable pushing their boundaries? But the right question was never, why do they hurt me so much? The real question is, what do I allow, even unintentionally, that teaches others that it is safe to hurt me? And before this question hurts you, I want you to listen to this carefully. It's not your fault. You were just trying to maintain ties. I was trying to be accepted. I was looking for validation with the tools I had. But the time has come to review this emotional script, to update the internal commands that were written when you didn't yet know how to protect yourself. Because the truth is, you weren't born to be a safe haven for those who don't know how to stay on solid ground. You are not here to be an emotional cushion for someone who throws around weight irresponsibly. It is possible, yes, absolutely possible, to be both kind and firm, be loving and say enough, caring for others without abandoning yourself. And it starts when you realize that setting boundaries is not an act of aggression. It's an act of self-love. When you understand that walking away from someone who hurts you is not evil. It's emotional maturity, and saying no firmly doesn't make you a cold person. It makes you a whole person. Stop believing that you need to be understood all the time. Those who demand too much from you have long understood that you are malleable. And that is precisely why it goes beyond. It demands, it manipulates. The good news? You can leave this place. You can learn a new language, that of emotional self-defense. She doesn't shout, she doesn't accuse, she doesn't go to war. It just establishes internal territory. And when that happens, something changes. The type of person who approaches you changes. Conversations change. Situations stop repeating themselves. What was once a cycle becomes a learning experience. What was once constant pain becomes a healthy frontier. What used to be a target becomes awareness. And it all starts with a single decision. I will no longer mold myself to be accepted by those who only respect me if I nullify myself. You don't need to harden yourself. You just need to come back to yourself, firmly, with truth, and with the courage to be you, without fear of who will leave because of it. When science speaks for you, behind every person who doesn't know how to say no, there is an ancient echo, an echo that repeats, if you don't please, you will be left behind. But this is not just a subjective impression. It is a studied, named pattern that has a direct impact on your emotional health. American psychologist Harriet B. Breker, author of the book, The Disease to Please, The Disease of Pleasing, has dedicated his career to investigating this silent and destructive behavior, the uncontrollable impulse to please others, even at the cost of one's own integrity. She calls this pattern the prison of acceptance, and the name couldn't be more accurate. According to Breker, many adults live conditioned by a kind of invisible compulsion to be approved, recognized, accepted at any cost. And this cost, most of the time, is self-esteem. These people develop a hypersensitive radar for the needs of others. They sense when someone is sad, bored, upset, before that person even says a word. But ironically, they turn off that radar when it comes to themselves. They ignore their own body's signals. They deny their own tiredness. They minimize their limits, emotions, and discomfort. They are masters at giving, but illiterate at receiving. And they blame themselves when they dare to ask for something simple. Space, respect, reciprocity. This emotional prison has no bars, but he has a complete system of reinforcements. Praise for being easy to deal with, for always being available, for never causing trouble. And so the cell closes without a sound. But psychology is not the only one that raises this alarm. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist and one of the greatest names in depth psychology, brings an equally disturbing perspective. He said, "What we deny in ourselves returns to dominate us." And what does this mean in practice? It means that when you repress your anger, when you swallow your frustration, when you silence your desire to be respected, that strength does not disappear. She just changes shape. It turns into chronic fatigue, silent irritability, emotional outbursts at the wrong times, or even worse, it turns into passivity in front of those who should be confronted. You become easy prey for manipulators, narcissists, and controllers in disguise, because by not taking a stand, you allow others to dictate the rules, and those who do not impose limits teach others that they can overcome them. Jung makes us face an uncomfortable truth. Being always understanding is sometimes the cruelest way to abandon yourself, because you choose to protect the relationship while destroying yourself. And maybe you are wondering, but then what do I do? Do I become cold? Do I close myself off from the world? Do I become selfish? The answer is no. The solution is not at the opposite extreme. It's in the center, in the balance between being kind and being solid, between welcoming and preserving, between listening to the other and listening to yourself first. And here comes an essential question. What if you could learn to be good without being stupid? What if there was a way to create a presence that commands respect without having to yell, argue, or walk away? What if I told you there is an invisible coda nonverbal, emotional, energetic language that makes abusive people simply lose interest in you? Yes, this code exists, and it's not complex. He doesn't require you to change your essence. On the contrary, it restores its original essence, the one that was stifled by the fear of displeasing. You were not born fragile. You have been conditioned not to react. But there is a brutal difference between being kind and being shaped by fear. Genuine kindness comes from choice. Yes, firm. Of the love that also knows how to say enough. If until today you were an easy target, it's not because you were weak. It's because no one taught you how to protect yourself emotionally. Now you have the tools. You understand the signs. You know that the yes that destroys the most is the one you say when you wanted to say no. It's time to reprogram your emotional language, to rebuild your posture, and to cultivate a respect that starts in the mirror. You will no longer ask permission to exist, not even to feel, not even to say, not here, because there is a type of peace that only arises after the first no is said firmly, and a kind of self-love that only blossoms when you stop diminishing yourself to fit in with others. From today onwards, you will walk differently, different look, and attract different relationships, because whoever learned to protect themselves is never targeted again.